would be best to have Tim and Lynn. So until I get information otherwise, we're going to go with others. Now, you may be right that some bylaws exist somewhere that supersede ours. And you may be right.
No, I'm not saying I'm picking the fight.
In which case, I'm sure legal will be happy to hold your name on the board.
Can we bring in for the board?
Huh?
You mean provide clarification to the board?
Yeah, I mean, you've got a good connection with them, so you can call them up and they'll give you the answer.
Anybody on the board?
Well, I want to thank everyone for showing up on such short notice. Ah, he arrived. We have a quorum. Thank you, sir. Yay! And I guess we are 1 minute from. Well, sit next to me. Swap them out. We know who you are anyway.
All right.
When do you have to leave? I know your time is 4. Okay. Probably at 12. So we've got, we have one. All right, well, it is 3:30. I'm going to call the meeting to order. We have 4 board members, which constitute a quorum. And let's say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well, I want to thank everyone for attending. Particularly, I want to thank the board members for, there's Glenn Bailey. Wonderful. Thank you, Glenn. I want to thank the board members for participating on such short notice, and I apologize for that. The topic today is the potential constitution of a subcommittee to evaluate vaccine-informed consent policy. I'm going to turn the topic over to Dr. Johnson, our medical director, but before doing so, I'd like to make just a couple of preliminary remarks. Peggy, one of our board members, in fact, our newest board member, asked on last Thursday what I thought was the absolute best question to ask, and I want to thank her for that. She asked, why are we doing this? And that's a great question. It's a superb question. And I sort of answered with short change because there was a lot of excitement in the room. I said, well, it's our zeitgeist. It is this moment. Well, let me put a little bit of flesh to what I meant by that comment. It may have occurred to you that there's a lot changing in our culture right now. Not every moment in history is the same. There are some moments where a whole lot more is happening in a compressed period of time. Other moments in history where decades can go by and virtually nothing happens. I think this moment in maybe world history, but certainly American history, we're going to witness a substantial transformation, at least a minimum, of the administrative state. That is to say, the federal government, the way the federal government behaves is going to change profoundly. And public health is not going to escape some of these profound changes. Let there be no mistake. I'm not going to predict how these changes are going to happen. The only thing I'm going to predict is changes are coming. So specifically, let's pick on the COVID vaccine. Well, within the last few days already, the FDA has terminated phase 1 clinical trials of the newest version of the COVID vaccine. Wow, that just came out of nowhere. As we speak, this week and next, we're going to have Senate confirmation of Jay Bhattacharya and Marty McCarty. It's kind of an alliterated name. It takes me a moment to get the two M's out. Both of those candidates are on record as co-signatures of a moratorium of the COVID vaccine. Now, I'm not predicting that the Senate is going to confirm them, although the track record of Trump's cabinet heretofore has been pretty good. But should they get confirmed, there is a very good chance that by late spring or certainly this summer, there will be a moratorium on the COVID vaccine. And when that happens, there will be disclosure. There will be a discussion. Why? We were told for 5 years, safe and effective. Why now the moratorium? Well, there will be disclosure. There will be the data files of the CDC and the FDA are going to be opened up. Maybe just like the Jeffrey Epstein files, maybe someday. The files of the federal administrative state are going to open up and people are going to see things for the first time. Now, when that happens, a whole lot of people are going to have the realization, oh my God, not too long ago, we were told safe and effective, and yet that was a lie. And a whole lot of people are going to come to the realization, well, my goodness, if they lied to us that profoundly, could they lie to us in other ways? And so I think it is fair to suppose that a whole lot about medicine in general and public health more specifically is going to come under a great deal of public scrutiny. Now, Pew Research data and other polling entities have established that the prestige and trust in public health has taken a major hit because of the COVID pandemic, a major hit. That statement is unassailable. All right? Now, public health institutions and entities can choose to ignore the fact that trust in public health has deteriorated, or you can attempt to get a hold of that and do something to improve the trust in public health. So my short answer to Peggy's great question, why are we doing this? Peggy, I'm doing it so that we can restore trust in public health. It's that simple. And if anyone wants to impugn the ethics of what I'm doing, such as our legal team has suggested, we'll bring it on. Let's talk about ethics. Well, with those remarks, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Johnson.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This meeting has been called because we failed, from my understanding of the communication from Eric, that we hadn't officially put forth the motion to form a committee. And so that's why we're here. And before I make that motion, what I'd like to do is share some basic information because behind motivation, because we had several comments that were made during our last meeting. And some of those comments were in relation to questioning our motivation. And so I'd like to be able to express where my motivation comes from, because it's only fair if others have made their assumptions that I should be able to defend where I'm coming from. There was speculation that we were trying to stop all vaccines, completely unfounded, ridiculous. There was assumptions that we were going to provide misinformation which was fascinating to me because if anyone took a look at the references that were listed on the frequently asked questions, which was just designed to be a preliminary document, it was not designed to be the final by any means. Most all of those, the vast majority of those quotes come from the CDC, the National Institute of Health, journals, published journals. I mean, they were just facts that came from respected entities, and so the whole idea that somehow everything that was there was misinformation, then people would have to say, well, the NIH and CDC has misinformation because that's where it came from. And it was actually shocking because the motivation came from, just as our chairman has said, from the fact that if somebody ignores the fact that public health has a bad image right now, they're missing a point. They're seeing the vast majority of the public don't trust anything that comes from the public realm. Certainly, there's a certain percentage of people who do, and that's fine. But what we're trying to do is repair some of the damage that's been done in the past. And in that attempt, we came up with what would be simply an informed consent. That was what we were trying to present to just the parents that would come to our facilities, not going to be imposed on anybody else, anywhere else, just an informed consent so that parents could say, wow, I've gotten information, I've been presented with information here that comes from the CDC, which is what we have been providing. And it was an attempt to at least provide information so that they could make a rational decision for their family. And there was one individual who said that it's very unlikely that I have given many vaccines as a family practitioner in my career, which again is completely unfounded, because I explained earlier in the meeting, maybe they missed that portion of it, is that myself and another doctor had an extremely large family practice in Southern California. I'm a native of Idaho, but trained out at UCLA and had a practice and lived down there for a while. And we had over 8,000 patients in our practice, the two of us, and the vast majority were young families, and I've given thousands and thousands of vaccines in my career. So I'm not anti-vax, and I'm not somebody who's unfamiliar with providing vaccines to a lot of people. But what awakened me, and I can understand their confusion because there's a lot of rhetoric, there's a lot of emotion, and with distrust comes emotion, and with money comes emotion because people don't want to lose their money. And I get all of that. But what we were trying to do is increase the image of public health, and that's what I think the board has a responsibility to do. We can ignore this fact and keep going down the pathway and say, oh, we don't care that a high percentage of our populace don't trust and wouldn't come in this building if they were threatened with their life. We can keep ignoring that, but we were trying to resolve that issue by providing information. Now, how did I come to have any doubts about vaccines after giving thousands of them to my patients for years? Well, I can understand why people have strong emotions because I might have been on the other side of that equation 23 years ago. But 21 years ago, I had a personal experience with a vaccine, our family did, that awakened me. And what happened was, here I am providing lots of vaccines to thousands of children. And all of a sudden, my wife and I, 21 years ago, had a baby that her 4-month vaccine, she had an incredibly strong reaction to. And we have ultrasounds of her in utero sucking her thumb. And she sucked her thumb when she was born. When she first came out, she was the easiest child to take care of because she was totally pacified by the fact she was always sucking her thumb. Well, immediately after getting her 4-month shot, she was immediately, within hours, horribly neurologically impacted. to the point where we could not get her to go to sleep. We tried to lay her down in a bed for a nap after she'd fall asleep in our arms. And as we laid her down, she'd start screaming because her whole sensory system on her whole back was on fire. We took her to the pediatrician, and by the way, another reason why we know that she was neurologically affected is because she was unable to find her mouth to suck her thumb. So when you see that in your child, it awakens you. And people will say that, oh, there's rare side effects, rare problems. Well, when it affects your daughter, it doesn't become rare anymore. It becomes real. And so we took her to the pediatrician here in town twice, and they said, we don't know. We don't know what's going on. And that's what we were left with. We don't know. Well, that's not very reassuring as a physician, and my wife was trained as a neonatal intensive care unit nurse. And so the two of us have now got a child who can't find her mouth with her thumb. And this lasted for 8 days. It did not change for 8 days. And we knew that this was probably permanent. And we prayed and prayed and prayed, and God on day 8 had mercy on our family. We heard her on day 8. We both happened to be at home, and we heard her awaken from her nap cooing just like she did before the shot. And we both looked at one another. You can imagine it's a little emotional for me, and I'm sorry. That is my little girl. And we looked at one another and didn't say a word and went running up the stairs and opened her door. And she smiled at us for the first time in 8 days. And we both started bawling because we got our little girl back. Okay? Now, God has mercifully, completely healed her, and she now has an academic athletic scholarship to college. She's brilliant, totally healed. But there was a high chance that that wasn't going to happen. So now, what I wanted to do is, now that's my past. My past is giving thousands of injections. My past is having a daughter who's severely affected. But I have maintained careful, cautious, balanced approach that I understand there are patients who want to be informed. And I understand there are patients who are going to have their children vaccinated no matter what because they believe the government. Which reminds me of another interesting point, which I think is important to share. In my past career, I have been involved in preventive medicine, and I was medical director of the largest supplement manufacturer in the world, and I've taught preventive medicine in 30 different countries around the world. One of those countries was Russia. This supplement company had thousands of customers in Russia, and those people wanted me to speak to teach them about preventive medicine. And one of the gentlemen who I spoke to, or in the crowd, was a gentleman who is a retired military general in the Russian, from the Russian military. And at the time, and this is probably still true, the average lifespan of a male in Russia is in the late 50s or right around 60. The Russian men don't live very long. And in fact, it was considered bad luck to wish a Russian man happy birthday on his 50th birthday because they thought that meant death. And so what happened was this gentleman was obese, metabolic syndrome, horribly insulin resistant, had horrible cholesterol levels. And I suggested to him that he consider changing his diet and consider decreasing the fatty sausages that he was eating on a regular basis. And he raised his hand in the middle of the discussion because as a general, you think you know everything, right? And he's used to, he wasn't a leader, but in that room he was. And through the Russian translator, he said, "Oh, doctor, 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 no, 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 that's wrong." And I go, "Really? How come my information to you is wrong?" He said, "Because if that were true, the government would have told me not to eat sausage." And I thought, that's like amazing, because right now we run into a group of people who say, no matter what I hear, if it's from an official authority, it's true. And heaven forbid you question authority. Well, I was taught to question everything when I went to med school. And I questioned stuff. And so if I want to add and inform our citizens and increase the image of this place, then I guess that's considered really wrong and bad by a lot of people. And I'm sorry. I'm just trying to add information and informed consent. So I would like to make a motion that we create a vaccine review committee, of which I want to have no question about my integrity, not be a part of that committee, so that we can hopefully arrive at some information to provide parents information that there may be positives and negatives that they may want to consider before vaccinating their child.
Is that a motion?
That's a motion.
All right. Do I hear a second? There is a motion. Do other board members hear my question? Is there a second? Jessica, do you even hear me? Do they hear me? I guess. I don't know. Okay, well, not hearing a second, then I'm going to step down as chairman.
This is Glenn.
Yes?
Yeah, I would second that motion.
Oh, well, thank you, Glenn. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I couldn't hit my mute button
Okay.
quick enough. It wasn't acting. Okay.
All right. All right. Well, now we have a motion and a second. I open the matter up for discussion. Are there any board members who wish to weigh in on this matter?
This is Peggy.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I have I have several questions, and first would be that we've had legal counsel recommend that we not be looking at the informed consent issue. That's one issue. Another issue I have is we do provide immunizations, and I totally am unaware of what those contractual requirements are related to us providing immunizations. Are there contractual requirements regarding informed consent and immunizations? I don't know the answer to those things. So I for one, feel like I need more information. And again, I'm new to the board, and I apologize if I ask too many questions. I did hear Duke say, he said something about we came up with the idea of informed consent. And again, last meeting was my first meeting. So, and my history being on boards is when you're on a board, you function as a board, which means the board collectively as a group. So I'm again just asking, was this a collective process amongst the whole board before I became a part of the board? That's one question I have. So again, I have multiple questions, and I did have the concern that legal counsel recommended not to go down this path.
Is that the summation of your comments?
At this point,
Okay, so you asked two questions. One of them is, did we entertain this issue before you became a board member? And thank you for becoming a board member. And indeed, you are fresh to the board. And the short answer to your question is no. We did not put this matter forward as a motion or an overt discussion before you became a board member. So you joined the crew, you joined the program at an exciting moment, but nothing transpired before your time. Moreover, even if it had, you are certainly welcome to catch up to speed, make yourself smart about what the issues are, and please vote your conscience. As far as legal goes, now it is absolutely true that our legal team has been triggered into throwing sand into this process. As I understand it, their challenges have been threefold. The first is, and sadly, legal is not here today to defend themselves, but that's okay. I'll make their point for them, and I'll put their arguments into a way to think about it. Their first point is that if Panhandle Health goes out on a limb and generates informed consent policy, we're setting ourselves up for liability. In other words, we're going to get sued. Now, I practiced medicine over 40 years. It is incomprehensible that a doctor or a healthcare provider is going to get sued for too much informed consent. They get sued for not enough, not too much. Moreover, it's not like Panhandle Health is denying a service. You do know that the state of Louisiana is now denying vaccines. Now, you might, if you're a citizen of Louisiana, make the case, well, you've denied me an essential healthcare service, and my child got sick and they got measles and bad outcome. But we're not denying any service. So one of the tenets of med-mal tort law is you have to show proximal cause of damage. Well, if we're providing the vaccine, that tenet of med-mal liability fails. That's their first argument. Their second argument is that we have not clarified the process. No, we haven't, because we haven't even gotten airspeed. Once we get airspeed and we have something to talk about, namely a subcommittee, then we'll call another meeting and we'll talk about process. So we're not running away from process. We love transparency. I'm going to heap huge praise of transparency on this whole process. But you can't undermine the proposition by saying it doesn't have process until you've had a chance to talk about process. Does that make sense? And the third one is the one from this morning at a 10 a.m. email I received from legal said, you know, it's possible what you're doing is against federal law. Now, they quoted a statute as it relates to federal statute requiring the CDC to establish informed consent for patients. Okay, so what Congress did is it created a statute that says, okay, federal bureaucracy, you are supposed to set up the content and the format for and the dissemination of informed consent for the childhood vaccine schedule. Yes, that's a true statement. That law does not say that they have the exclusive right. I submit to you, I've practiced medicine over 40 years. Never once did the federal government say, oh no, you can't tell patients X, Y, or Z. Now, if they're going to make that claim, then the burden of proof is on that law firm to prove that we are forbidden by federal statute for coming up with our own policy. And by the way, it's going to be on their dollar that they come up with that legal brief. If they're going to throw that out as, oh, it's against federal law or might be against federal law, then on your dollar, you prove it. So that's my response to the so-called legal has advised us not to go this way. Those are the three arguments that they have put forward. There may be some others, but I'm here to tell you that, well, I'll say enough. I'm going to stop right there. Are there any other board members who would like to chime in?
This is Jessica Jameson, and my comment on this relates again to legal. I think that they are here in an advisory role for a reason. I think that while it is an advisory role, it would behoove us as a board to understand exactly what their concerns are and where they are coming from prior to hastily rushing in, which is what this seems like. As fast as we can get a subcommittee going, we've got to get going, let's move this through. It is my opinion that we should not create this subcommittee until we have a full understanding of what the concerns are. And I don't, because as you said, there was an email at 10 o'clock this morning, which I have not yet read. So it is my opinion that this process, while I'm not concerned about forming a subcommittee. I'm saying that I would like to hear what the legal team has. I think that saying that they have been triggered, we don't know that. I think we have asked them to provide a service, which they are doing. I want to hear what they have to say prior to moving forward. And that is my opinion.
Okay.
I would absolutely agree with Jessica on that matter. This does seem hasty, and being pushed through.
So, Tim, let me ask you a question. How would you,
Yes.
What is your recommendation as we move forward? What would you recommend?
I would recommend that we table this till we hear more of what's coming down from the federal government. We get 4% of the vaccines to children in North Idaho, and we're jumping into this arena with PhD. I would say we pump the brakes a little bit on this.
Okay, so all right, your position is clear. Okay, I understand. Glenn, do you want to weigh in?
Yeah, I can understand the reluctance of members. This is happening pretty quickly here. And I would like to get more information from our legal team, find out what their concerns are before we actually approve this board. So yeah, that's my thoughts as well.
So your recommendation as we move forward is that at the next board meeting, we bring the topic up, but we have legal in attendance to hold our hand. Is that your recommendation?
Yes.
Okay, clearly understood. Jessica, going back to you, what would be your recommendation moving forward? What do you want to see?
My recommendation is that we give legal enough time that someone can be present at a meeting to have a discussion with us. I resent the comment of holding our hand because, again, I think that that is not the intention of the legal team that we have hired, but I think that they can provide a different point of view that is valuable prior to us moving forward with this. So that my recommendation is that we give them enough notice and they are able to have someone there to tell us what their concerns are, and we can determine from that point, do we think these are significant enough concerns that we need to not do this? Do we think these are significant enough concerns that we need more information, or do we think we are satisfied with proceeding?
So would you bury the topic or bring the topic back up?
I think we have to have the topic be discussed in order for them to provide guidance on it. I don't know what the rules are. I don't believe they can give us this. I mean, I don't know how the meeting rules go, but I would like to hear what they have to say, whether that be at the next board meeting, whether that be at another board meeting prior to that. I would like to hear what they have to say in entirety rather than, hearing bits and pieces coming
Okay,
through.
fair enough. So if I understand you correctly, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, you would bring the topic back up at the next board meeting and invite legal to weigh in on it. Is that what you're saying?
I would like to, but I agree with Tim that I think that there's some federal government things that are going to come down on this as well. And so I don't know what my ultimate decision would be, but that would be certainly be my first step, is that I think they need to be involved in just giving us their recommendations before we then further discuss what PhD is going to do from there.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. Well, then I'm going to call for a vote. This is going to be one where we'll want to take a roll call. So all of those in favor say aye. Dr. Johnson, and I guess Dr. Fletcher. Any other ayes? Hearing none.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Can you hear me? This is Glenn. Could you restate first the motion so
Okay,
we,
fair enough. Thank you. Thank you. So the motion is that we constitute a subcommittee to evaluate vaccine informed consent policy. All those in favor, is that clear, Glenn?
yes, thank you.
Okay. Well, since we already have an idea of the yays, roll call vote on the nays, please.
Could you repeat that motion one more time? I want to be clear.
Okay. The motion is that the Panhandle Health Board constitute a subcommittee to investigate and make recommendations on vaccine-informed consent policy for the health district. And bear in mind, this would only impact the health district. We're not talking about informed consent policy for private medicine or anyone else.
Right, the patients of the health district.
For the patients, yeah, for the patients of the health district. Is that clear, Peggy?
Yes.
Okay, all those against, please, please say so.
Nay.
I'm going to vote no also. This is Peggy.
Okay. Jessica?
And
Nay.
Okay, so we have 4 noes, 2 yays. The motion fails. I'm now going to turn the meeting over to the public comment session. We're done with the action item. I know that Commissioner Korn is on the line and he has a tight schedule, and I promised him that I would recognize him up front because he has meetings. Commissioner Korn, you are front and center, sir. Commissioner Korn? Oh, we
Let
may
me
have,
try that. Can you guys hear me okay?
yes.
Thank you for having us. Thank you for having the discussion. There's a few things that I would like to say real quick. The board of Panhandle Health is in a unique position right now. You guys have an opportunity to do the right thing, not just kick the can down the road, not just listen to an opinion of a lawyer, not to try and follow federal statutes or federal laws. You guys have a unique opportunity here to actually serve the public of the 5 northern counties of Idaho. This is nothing more than informed consent. I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around the opposition to this. Why wouldn't you want to tell the parents and our citizens the facts? That's all that we're asking for is the facts. of these vaccines? Good or bad? Both. Just let us know the facts. You guys promised, I think, in the last meeting that you would either have a town hall meeting regarding this and or put together a subcommittee, and now that subcommittee seems to have failed. So I'm assuming you're going to move forward with a town hall open to the public to discuss this matter further. I'm not sure why the pushback of informing the public of the facts and the truth. I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around it. And for most constituents out there, like I said at your last board meeting, there's a lack of trust in government. And why is that? It's for this situation right here. This is one prime example that people no longer trust their government. Panhandle Health Board is no different at this time. I heard a couple of the arguments from some of the board members. I'm not a lawyer, but I find it hard to believe that your legal representative recommended not to move forward with a subcommittee. What are the legal implementations of creating a subcommittee? I can't think of any off the top of my head. Number one, there was a liability issue. I would like to know what the liability of informing the public with the truth and the facts are. I would love to hear where the liability of that lies. Number two, there's no verified process on what? Your verified process and how to put the subcommittee together, or what exactly are they talking about? Number three, possibly violates federal law. How can telling the truth violate any law? I come back to the Constitution. Not telling the truth, I would think, would violate the law more than telling the truth. There's nothing preventing the board from moving forward on this matter at this time, but it is too late now because you guys have already voted for it. So that's my opinion. That's the opinion of the 20,000 people that I represent. And I hope that you guys can kind of come together and move forward on building the subcommittee. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to now go down the list as they appeared, as you signed in. I'm not making any bias. Yes, sir. This person, who is this? You want to be bumped up on the list? Sure.
It should be their decision. Is it okay if I ask them?
I'm sorry, what did you, I can't get.
He wants to speak. Yes.
Is it okay if I
Yes, you
ask
can
the?
speak, but you're 3 minutes. Everyone gets 3 minutes.
Okay, I was going to ask them if it was okay if I went first because my oxygen machine might be
I
going
guess
out.
so, sure, you're there.
Okay. I've been thinking about the child author Roald Dahl, who was a British World War II fighter ace. And my father, who was a B-52 pilot, actually got to meet him when he was in England. And you all know him from his work that led to the movie Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, the book Matilda, which saw how intelligence can defeat bullies. And the sad thing, though, is his daughter died right before the measles vaccine came out in '63. She got encephalitis from measles and died. And what was so powerful about that was, well, it just made me think about measles every time I was reading his books to my kids and such. But Dr. Johnson, I share your anguish. I have a son with severe autism. I have a micro-preemie granddaughter who had a grade 3 brain bleed who has autism. I am a researcher. I used to work at a medical school. And I was very much backing the science. But when Wakefield's article came out linking the MMR to autism, I put a pause on it. My pediatrician said, you shouldn't do that. When Wakefield came out and said that he had falsified his data, I was back on board with the vaccines. And I'm looking at what's happening now. As you said, we need to look forward with what's happening with our federal government. We have a guy in charge of, I don't know if it's HHS, Mr. Kennedy, vaccine denier. It's his district that's having a resurgence of measles. Through Johns Hopkins, I took a contract tracing course on communicable diseases. Measles is the most communicable disease we have. When between 68 and 69, no, 67 and 69, there was a 97% drop in measles cases after the vaccine came out in 63. They declared it eradicated from the US in 2000. Unfortunately, that wasn't a world eradication, and that's why it bounces back. SARS, I never thought I should get another SARS vaccine until I talked to my physician, and they said, yeah, you as an older person can still be a carrier for it. And with me having so many grandkids, I'd sure hate to give them SARS. I would love to be on any type of committee, even if it doesn't formulate. You can always have some sort of ad hoc committee, that's not necessarily under the rules of meetings and stuff for people who are interested in this. Anyway, thank you very much.
Sir, thank you for your input. Next is Rick Kirshner.
Well, I can't say that I'm disappointed in the outcome of that vote because my expectations of public health are already so low after the last 4 years. And it does seem to me like something about this meeting has some kind of monkey business attached to it because I don't understand why people couldn't get a link to this meeting. I really don't understand why it was suddenly an emergency. What was the emergency? And I also don't know how this committee can ignore the many voices that attended the previous meeting and spoke openly and earnestly about the importance of this specific issue as our country and our state deals with unexplainable and unprecedented levels of sickness and disability. But let's put all that aside and speak of the real issue, the morality of providing people with the opportunity to be informed and to consent to something being put into their bodies. Informed consent is a cornerstone of ethical medical practice. People have the right to know the potential risks and benefits of a pharmaceutical product so they can make choices that match their values and circumstances. To deny that information undermines the right of individuals to have control over their own health decisions. Now, I realize that some may argue that downplaying risks or concealing them can be justified to promote public health, that somehow greater good outweighs individual rights in some cases. But this is based on a false assumption that people can't handle the truth or make rational choices. And denying information risks backfiring when risks that were hidden become known and trust in authorities craters as it has now. The result is that hesitancy skyrockets. Morally, I don't think you can defend the idea of withholding relevant information unless you're in a battlefield triage scenario. To do so is to assume people can't handle nuance, and it clashes with basic respect for individual autonomy. As for the monkey business that took place around this meeting, I can only say this: people will talk, and this will erode even more confidence in the ability of this body to act in our community's interest, and it reflects a basic disrespect of citizens should have no place in our community. Personally, I would want anyone involved in not getting information out about this meeting in a reasonable amount of time to be highlighted in the community so people know who they are and what they can expect going forward. I've taken names. Please don't double down on the arrogance, selfishness, and stupidity we have all witnessed and which damaged so many over the last 5 years. It'll only hasten the demise of the very concept of responsible public health in governance.
Thank you, Dr. Kirshner. Greg Pinnock.
Yeah, my name is Greg Pinnock. I'm a retired cardiologist, raised in Idaho, living up here. I'm Idaho through and through. I find it amazing that we're talking about uh, informed consent as a controversial issue. I spent 30 years of my career giving patients informed consent with medical procedures, sticking catheters in their hearts, putting pacemakers in, so forth. I couldn't agree more with Tom. More information is never a bad thing. Doctors aren't sued because you give too much information. Doctors are sued from just the opposite. It's part of informed consent. The informed part is information. So what does informed consent consist of? It consists of, specifically with vaccines, going over the benefits, potential risks, potential alternatives, treatments. You know, some diseases aren't that bad if you get them for a lot of people. What's the prevalence of those things in northern Idaho? What are the alternatives? Are there treatments out there that we can use in place of vaccines? I think with regard to the medical community, there's a lot of unknowns. I'm not a vaccine denier. I never thought about vaccines, honestly. I got them all growing up as a kid, got all of them. When I practiced, I got the flu vaccine every year, not because I wanted it, but the hospital said you needed flu vaccine. So I got it. I got hepatitis B vaccine because I thought, well, I'm around blood every day. I should probably get a hepatitis B vaccine. Then COVID came, and I think we all got PhDs in vaccinology. And at least for myself, I got a PhD in vaccinology. And the company I work for wanted to, they mandated vaccines. And I said, I don't think so. I did some molecular biology in undergraduate school, and I said, you know, I know what mRNA is. I understand the molecular biology, and this stuff is not your typical vaccine. So then I looked into other vaccines, childhood vaccines. And, you know, it turns out there's a lot of unknowns. It's not black and white. It's not all vaccines are good, all vaccines are bad. You know, there may be a Goldilocks spot, there may be a sweet spot. But, you know, I think what RFK Jr. has said is let's do the real science. Let's have those placebo-controlled trials. Let's see what the real risks and what the real benefits are. Let's look into what the interactions are. And let's answer some of these questions. That starts with informed consent. Let's tell the patients, the people, not only what we know, but what we don't know. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Pinnock. Next is Jessica Fry. We're running with we have a run of doctors. Are you also a doctor?
No, I'm just
Okay.
a mother.
You're a mom. Okay,
Yes,
fair
and I
enough.
came last week and it was very crowded and I wanted to get online today and I even called you, sir. And I was very disappointed there wasn't a link and there should have been a 24-hour notice. As far as I know, that's the legal way to do it. So it's disappointing. This room was really full. Everyone was respectful. I'm a mother who had a child who kept getting worse every round of vaccines, and the doctor kept telling me there was no link, a local doctor here, and there has to be a link because he just kept getting worse, and to this day he still struggles, and I think I should have been able to talk to my doctor without feeling guilted into it and signing something saying I was refusing to take vaccines. That was embarrassing, you know. I did not feel like they told me the truth. That's why I'm here. And I had to drop everything, and it would have been very convenient just to be online. Thank you.
Thank you. Bob and Kathy, is that a B? Thompson? You're a tag team? You'll speak for the team?
No, I'm Bob Thompson from Bonner County. You brought up today that the last meeting was about this topic so emotional. And then today you talk about the trust in government and losing the trust. people's trust in the government's losing our trust. And I can associate that trust, and where I lost it was at the front doors of this building 5 years ago. And you have a word emotion, and then I could have two more words that go along with it that would cause my emotion. It's coercion and tyranny. And I just wanted to bring that up, that we experienced that trying to come to these public meetings, and for all the rules they made up about it, we couldn't all come in here and we couldn't have our say. And we were at many meetings in many different municipalities. We couldn't have our say and go to our public meetings because they arbitrarily changed the rules. Well, to me, that's, I'm not talking about, the informed consent. I could go along with Commissioner Korn and say, who doesn't want too much information or enough information or any information at all? We live in the information age. The click of our fingers, you go to the internet. How many people in here are going to go buy something on the internet and they don't go and do the studies on if they're getting the right thing or if it's going to get mailed from China or whatever? You just go arbitrarily, just click the button and hope you get what it is. No, you go through there and you find out as much as you can about it before you spend your money. So same difference here. Informed consent, I can't see any reason for blocking that or even questioning it. It's ridiculous. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Rochelle Austin? Thank you.
My name is Rochelle Addison, and if you have to try to pull a fast one and block our ability to be properly informed to consent to medical treatment, do you have nefarious purposes that couldn't stand to have light shined on them? Don't violate our rights to be informed and/or to consent. What about people who may die or be seriously or permanently injured from side effects or interactions that could have saved themselves if only they'd had the proper information? What about the collateral damage to the family and friends, not to mention the community of those people? You should be working for the well-being of we the people. Although from recent experience, it seems health boards work for big pharma. You are further degrading the trust of all things medical, and a growing number of people think we should consider doing away with tyrannical health boards altogether. If you deny the subcommittee, you should be removed from your position for violating transparency, public trust, the trust of the board, and the basic health tenet of informed consent. I don't know who your attorney is, so I don't know if this applies here, but I've heard lots of leftist, politically motivated bad advice given to certain boards in this county. I hope you move forward on the subcommittee in the very near future. Due diligence is needed. Thank you.
The next person is K.A.R. Carr. That you? Yeah, okay, go.
Hi, my name is Karen Yao, and I'm a PhD virologist and immunologist trained by the Johns Hopkins University. I just want to clarify something, that adverse events are always published in the medical literature. They're not being covered up. I've published them myself. So if you learn how to read the medical literature, you do not need to depend on a third party to translate that for you. But my only concern with the informed consent is how the third party interprets that medical literature. And that's, I think, it's what the legal is concerned about. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Next is Anna Spence. Is you? Oh, well, at least I'm honoring your presence. Thank you. Thank you for being here. Okay. Sherilyn Long.
Thank you. I had probably about 20, 30 minutes to get over here, so I don't have anything well prepared. My name is Sherilyn Long. I don't have big degrees or big names. I am a consumer. I'm also an herbalist, And I do work with people who have experienced being tossed around and not being heard within the medical profession, where they don't know what's going on. They have mystery things and they're wondering what it is. I started out working with parents with their children with developmental disabilities. And one of the things that I've heard and I understand is that they say 1 in a million. Whenever there's something that happens, it's 1 in a million. But in my experience, it's not 1 in a million that there's damage, that there's injury that happens. And for the parents that I've worked with, I've heard many stories. My baby was perfect before this, before they had that vaccine. I've heard a friend of mine, Shelly, her son, Vance, died after his vaccine. Thankfully, she was able to have a huge amount of research and evidence, and that she actually got past the vaccine courts and actually got rewarded for the injury. But other folks, like other clients that I had when I did service coordination, they weren't so lucky. They had the proof of encephalopathy, but they couldn't connect that this was connected to the vaccine, but they couldn't connect the diagnosis of autism or other things with it. They were brushed aside. Currently, I work with a number of women who've had breast implant illness. They have a black box warning now, thankfully, because people have sought to say, you need to give the other side of it. We need to know what might happen. If I'm watching TV, I see advertisements on there and they list all the side effects. There are folks that have been seeking to try to get even GMOs labeled. The movement in society right now is for informed consent. Whatever way people choose, and I always say this with the clients that I work with, you are in the driver's seat. Here's the information, research, whatever it is, right? But you get to choose because this is your body. And the foundation to any relationship is trust. I have an amazing relationship with my husband because we have trust. Whether that is we're dealing with a trust with a practitioner, a provider, a physician client trust, whether we're dealing with governmental trust or here with the Panhandle Health District. I find it appalling that you wouldn't know the research. Why? To say, I don't want to give informed consent is essence saying, digging my head in the sand to say, I don't even want to know what the research is. I think that's disgusting. Thank you.
Thank you. You did say something that triggered. You said that the consensus of the population is going in the direction of more informed consent. Last week, House Bill 131 was a piece of legislation in the state assembly. And that piece of legislation would have required labeling of human blood products. So in other words, you have a donor, they give blood. Now you have a recipient, somebody who needs blood. And this bill would have required that the blood products label whether the donor had received a COVID vaccine or not. By the way, it's not yet moved over to the Senate, but on the House side, it passed 53-17, and that included a lot of Democrats. Parenthetically, one of the nays was a Republican representative from District 1, where I live, Mark Sauter. There's been a lot of chatter as to whether Mark Sauter will be reelected. Okay, now let's go to people who are on the internet. And I don't, Amy Lunsford, are you there? She may have left. Tanya Wilson. Jessica, can they hear us? We may have lost them. Amy Lunsford. Okay. Tanya Wilson. Okay, well, I think we're done. Well, I want to thank everyone. I will take a motion to adjourn. Do I hear a motion? Yes, sir.
You there?
Yes, hello? Who's speaking? Tim? Yeah, did you want to say something, Tim?
Yes, I did.
Oh, yes, sir.
In the crowd, I heard the fact that this meeting was put on fast without people knowing about it. And it was really seemed like it was directed at the board, that the board did this, when actually, Dr. Fletcher, it was yourself that did this. So I want to clarify that. We're trying to get clarification from legal, which that is to protect PhD. And yeah, that's what I'll say about that. I'm not against the consent. I just want to do this right and not hasty. That's all.
Duly noted. Thank you for that comment. Let me clarify, by the way, the matter of informing the public of this meeting. Okay, so I'm going to shoulder a huge amount of the responsibility here. It came to my attention Friday that we didn't really have a motion at last week's meeting, even though a lot of people assumed we had a motion, but I'll take it on face value that we didn't. And so what I wanted to do was just reconstitute the board, put it up for a motion, and it failed. Okay, actually, I predicted it would fail. And that's okay. Now, I'm not going to take responsibility for the fact that the public was not given a digital link to tie into the meeting. And when efforts were made to call Panhandle Health, the response was, well, no, it's an open meeting, all right, but you have to come in. Now, heretofore, other meetings, you at least could link in, at least on YouTube or something. But generally, it's in that part of the. So yes, you can blame me for calling a quick meeting. I'll take full responsibility. It's my fault. Had I been asked, I would have said, but why don't we allow the public to have an internet access? But I wasn't asked that. Okay.
Chairman, if I could clarify that. This meeting was set up identical to the February 20th meeting, where our discussion was if an individual wants to make public comment, have them come into the office and make public comment. That is exactly how we set this meeting up. And when we noticed this meeting on Friday at your direction, if you look at our website, we told everyone, come down to our meeting or come down to our office if you would like to make a comment. So we have proceeded with this meeting exactly how we have in every other meeting in an effort to be transparent.
Right.
But the short notice of the matter made that certainly challenging. And we did update. We did notice that was a short oversight on our part, but we did notice that on our website in addition to the notice. So again, in the short notice of trying to put this together in essentially a matter of hours, we did everything that we could to try to be as transparent as possible, and that is certainly our goal here.
Thank you, Aaron.
Mr. Chairman, this is
Yes,
Glenn
sir.
Bailey.
Yes, sir.
Did you notice that Amy Lunsford and Tanya Willis are still on board? They still want to make comments.
Well, I asked them. Okay, thank
No,
you.
you asked them, but they
Glenn.
didn't respond, but now they're raising their hand.
Okay,
So,
believe me, Glenn, I've asked multiple times. Let me ask again. Amy Lunsford, can you hear me? Amy Lunsford, can you hear me? Oh, why can't I speak? Well, that's probably because AV on our end is misbehaving.
I don't think it's on our end. She's not muted.
Okay, let me go to the next person. Kristen Dodd, can you
Okay.
hear me?
Amy,
I can hear
replied
you.
that she could hear you. Yeah, Connie, okay.
Who's talking?
This is Kristen Dodd.
Okay,
Is it
speak.
okay if I
Kristen,
speak?
we got you. Go.
Okay, I just wanted to quickly say, if any government agency or healthcare provider is going to advertise, facilitate, promote, or provide vaccines, masks, or any other medical device, treatment, therapy, or advice, then they have a duty to provide informed consent as well. If there is a concern about interpreting the medical information, as mentioned a little bit earlier, then the agency should not be advertising, facilitating, promoting, or providing to begin with. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Amy Lunsford, one more time. I really am in your court. We have it's an AP. And Tanya Wilson, I think, dropped out. Glenn, is there anyone I'm missing?
Well, Amy's been giving you text messages. Have you seen those flash up on the screen?
We see her, we see that she's plugged in, but we don't have audio with her for whatever reason. And by the way, Tanya Wilson is saying the same thing. She's saying I'm present, however, I can't hear. And Amy is saying, why can't I speak? Well, Amy, it's because we cut your tongue out. I don't know.
Okay, we're having technical difficulties.
I don't understand. I'm not smart. Jessica, how come there's that little cross over the mic underneath? See Amy Lunsford unverified?
She's been disabled. Her mic is disabled.
So there's no way to unmute her.
Yeah, Amy just texted again saying she's unable to communicate.
Oh, that's an idea. Do you have her number? Oh, there's an idea. Hold on, Amy. The cavalry is coming to the rescue. Well, hello, Amy.
It's on pause here.
You're on speaker. Go ahead and ask your question.
Okay, so I will just kind of back up everybody else that there's a lot of uncertainty and trust with our government right now. And I think the more transparency that somebody can convey to the public, the better off everybody else is going to feel about them facilitating something such as, childhood immunizations. And also, when you guys go back and kind of discuss this in a workshop, can you give people information on why they are pushing these vaccinations on such young bodies with such small immunization, immune buildup? Why can't we wait to give these immunizations to children as they get older, if that's what we choose to do? Why are we pushing these on small babies? And again, I feel for all those people who did have children that did suffer from these, and I again blame that on lack of transparency. I had a doctor that was very transparent, and we chose to wait to give our babies vaccinations because of egg allergies and other issues. So I just look forward for this moving forward, and I look forward to seeing more transparency come from the Panhandle Health District. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. There's Jeff Tulin.
Mr. Chairman, it appears that Tanya Wilson has provided a comment in.
Oh, okay, I'm going to read Tanya Wilson's comment because she's been muted somehow. I don't know if this will be read. However, I am dumbfounded that we are arguing about whether or not consumers are entitled to informed consent. As a nurse, it is my duty to give my patients as much information as possible. There you have it.
Raise my hand.
What's the deal with Jeff? He's external. What's the deal? Have we covered everyone? I think so.
This is Peggy. Can I say one more thing?
Yes, Peggy? Sure, of course.
I think what needs to be made clear is health does have informed consent. What we have been talking about at the last meeting and this meeting was a change to the process that is already in place. People need to know there is a process for informed consent, and the meeting was talking about making changes from what is currently in place. It's not like Panhandle Health is against informed consent or does not have that as part of the process.
Okay. Thank you for that comment.
And Mr. Chairman, this is Glenn Bailey.
Yes, Glenn?
I agree with Peggy Cavalla. I think there's a misconception among a lot of the public comments that we are trying to avoid informed consent, which is totally incorrect. We are in favor of informed consent, and the Panhandle Health District is providing informed consent. This is considering, okay, so what informed consent will they be providing or should they be providing? I think that's what we're asking for clarification on, and that's why we want this subcommittee to get together and give us recommendations on that topic that the board can approve and put into put into Panhandle Health District policy.
Somehow.
And that's all I had to say.
Okay. Peggy, you want to weigh in again?
I just think the message has to be clear because it's not clear. I think people are thinking there's not informed consent, and there most certainly is informed consent. The board collectively believes in informed consent. It was a change to the process that was being discussed at the last two meetings, and I'm just a little confounded, that people would think that we don't have informed consent. So
Okay.
Anyway.
Thank you for that comment. I'm going to recognize one of the audience here, Dr. Kirchner.
So informed consent isn't something you give somebody. You inform them and they either do consent or they don't consent. And the issue at play for a lot of people who have lost trust in
Correct.
public health, I'm sorry, I'm talking. The issue in play for a lot of people when it comes to trusting public health is, are we being informed of risk as well as benefit, and how are we being informed of risk? And the COVID vaccine brought all of this to the fore, and many of us spent a lot more time learning about the risks as well as the benefits of a multitude of vaccines as a consequence of the misinformation that was being spread, some of which I heard here today. Bobby Kennedy is not an anti-vaxxer. That's casting aspersions on somebody that actually is calling for good science so we can actually know the truth about things. Science isn't about looking for proof of your assumptions. It's about testing your assumptions and then finding out what holds up. And that's all he's trying to do. And also, measles was almost completely eliminated in the United States due to other factors, and it's easily treated with vitamin A. So informed consent is about informing people so they can decide whether to consent based on that information. And I don't believe people are being informed properly. What they're getting is information from the CDC, and the CDC appears to many of us to be a captured agency that's in service to the pharmaceutical industry, just like the medical community seems to be more in service to the pharmaceutical industry than the consumer of healthcare services. So that's what I wanted to say.
Who? Who does? No, Tanya, no. Okay, Tanya Wilson has written something. No misconception here. I did not get the risk versus benefits of vaccines that were administered to my children. Give it to families on a paper in such a manner that they can read it. This ensures they get all of the information. All right, fair enough. By the way, so Peggy, allow me an opportunity to respond to your point. You're saying that certainly you and no rational board member would be against informed consent. Agreed. I mean, that would be immoral. So of course you believe informed consent. And so does Tim, and so does Glenn, and so do all the board members that voted against this subcommittee. What I would submit to you is not all informed consent is equal. Now let that thought resonate with you. Yes.
And Mr. Chairman, this is Glenn, if I could.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead, Glenn.
I did not vote against informed consent for the subcommittee. I voted that we need further clarification from our legal counsel before we institute this subcommittee.
Fair enough.
I still want to hear it. So I don't like being told that I am voting against informed consent.
I didn't say you did. No one said that. I said you were one of the 4 who voted against establishing a subcommittee today. We're going to bring it up again. You will have another opportunity to weigh in on the topic.
Thank you for the clarification.
But sir, I said
that
all board members are for informed consent. I said that. Of course you're for informed consent. Of course. Just as Peggy is, of course. Dr. Pennock.
My question to the board is, what's the liability of Panhandle Health if the child comes in and gets vaccinated, has a severe adverse reaction again?
Okay, that is a fascinating question for the following reason.
Mr. Chairman, we did not hear his comment.
Oh, I'm sorry.
He's not on a microphone.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It was a question for the board and a legal question. What's the liability of Panhandle Health? If a person, child, whomever comes into Panhandle Health, gets vaccinated, has a severe adverse reaction or event, and they weren't given adequate or sufficient informed consent.
Right. That's a great question. So sadly, the answer to your question is no liability at all. The 1986 Childhood Vaccine Act essentially gives blanket immunity to the entire industry. The pharmaceuticals have immunity, the providers have immunity, the medical establishment has immunity, Panhandle Health has immunity. You can't sue them. You can't. They are above the law. Okay? So that is a fact. All right. Now, let me finish, sir. No, I'm not done, sir. I will let you speak. All right. So that's the short answer. Now, something very interesting happened this last week in the European Union. Now, I don't know if this is a harbinger. I don't know what it means. Of course, this is the Europeans, not us. And it's the European court. This was not like the French court or the German court or the Greek court. This was the European court. And I don't understand the EU, the European Union, and that all of that governmental entity. But the decision was actually fascinating. Do you know what they decided? And this was the jurist at a pretty high level. This was at their equivalent of a Supreme Court. At a high level, decided that the providers, the doctors that it takes a prescription to give a vaccine, and that the doctors who give that prescription and who then administer the vaccine are to be held responsible for the the consequences of that medical intervention. Now, again, this is Europe. That's not here. But we have already mentioned several times this afternoon that the zeitgeist is changing. People of the planet are waking up. Things are changing. As we have been the last 40 years, may not be the way we go the next 40 years. Now, we can collectively embrace that phenomena or not. Did I answer your question? Sir, over in the corner.
Well, the one thing I think we've all learned tonight is that perception is just as strong as reality. And when you're talking about informed consent, I applaud you for having people with clear information. Now, there is one way you should not do informed consent, and that is the Kootenai Health way. If you go through their ER, they have you sign an electronic slate. Unfortunately, they don't give you the 4 pages of things that you just signed your rights away to. That's not true informed consent. The other thing, there are vaccine courts in the United States that specifically address the liabilities of vaccines. And yeah, I do think pharmaceutical companies should be withheld, or not withheld. I think they should be found at fault if they've skewed the numbers, if they've done something underhanded. I mean, all we have to do is think back to the 50s with thalidomide, which is my era. But, and the other thing is, I think what people were talking about was access to the board to these meetings. I think the board's done a really good job at trying to give people their opportunity. They've extended the meeting for people to send in texts, to call on the telephone. My 25 years of advocacy with school boards and the Idaho statute state, all you have to do is lock out one person, and whatever you voted on can be undone through a simple action in court. So I say keep up that good work of keeping these board meetings open.
Thank you. Any other comments? This has been a long meeting. Any board members want to weigh in? Going once. We've actually lost several of them. I don't blame you. You are welcome to leave. Thank you for your. Oh, I need you. Wait, Glenn, don't leave. I need a motion to adjourn.
I'm still here.
I need a motion to adjourn.
Oh. All right. If we are complete with the meeting, Mr. Chairman, I would make a motion we adjourn.
Thank you. Peggy, I need a second.
Yes, I'll second that.
Wonderful. Hearing, this is going to be one of these negative votes. Are there any objections to adjournment? Hearing none, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, board members. Peggy, thank you very much. Glenn, thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, thanks. Good meeting.
All right, there we go, folks. Thank you all. Director, thank you for your participation. Okay, there we go. I guess we're not going to meet tomorrow.
Fair enough.
I'm not sure we're going to meet again.
Probably not. Probably be in front of the whole board. Should probably be in front of the whole board.
Oh, yeah, no, we shouldn't ever meet again. No. Yeah, nothing to say.
So much for agree to disagree, I guess.
So much for what?
For agree to disagree.
Okay. And we agree to disagree.
Fair enough.